What if Earth had a twin, and it's been watching us this whole time? Imagine a planet mirroring our own, its oceans glistening under the same sun, its continents shaped eerily like ours, orbiting in perfect sync but always hidden from view. For centuries, that question belonged to science fiction. But now, whispers from deep inside NASA and a wave of recent leaks have pulled it into the realm of possibility. In late 2023, an anonymous upload appeared on an encrypted forum known for hosting whistleblower data. The files claim to come from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, marked with phrases like confidential orbital data, second Earth object, and the haunting term, opposition mirror body. While heavily redacted, the files pointed to one idea that sent shockwaves through amateur astronomers and insiders alike. There may be a twin Earth, orbiting the Sun directly opposite us, perfectly concealed. NASA has made no official statement about these files, but the timing is suspicious. Around the same period, unusual internal changes began taking place. Deep space tracking projects were suddenly classified. Unpublished observational data from probes like Voyager and SOHO quietly vanished from public archives. Researchers started to ask, what is NASA hiding? If the leaked NASA files are authentic, they raise questions too large to ignore. A second Earth found in our own solar system would not just be the biggest scientific discovery of the century, it would rewrite human history. Religions that speak of dualities and mirrored worlds might suddenly seem more literal than metaphorical. Philosophies grounded in Earth's uniqueness would be overturned. And governments would face a terrifying question: who, or what, lives there? Could this hidden twin planet be uninhabited? Or worse, could it be inhabited, and aware of us? These aren't the ramblings of fringe theorists anymore. They are conversations happening quietly in scientific circles, in classified briefings, and behind locked doors. As this story unfolds, we'll explore what the leaked files reveal, why NASA might be hiding the truth, and what it all means for our place in the universe. Because if this twin Earth really exists, it may already know we're here. The first clue, a planet called 2015 TG 387, the Goblin, in the frozen reaches of our solar system, where sunlight fades into cosmic silence, an object was discovered that would raise more questions than answers. In 2015, a team of astronomers, funded in part by NASA, identified a strange and distant celestial body far beyond Pluto. They called it 2015 TG 387, but it quickly earned a more provocative nickname, the Goblin. At first glance, it appeared to be just another icy object in the Kuiper belt. But its orbit made scientists stop and stare. Unlike known planets and most dwarf planets, the Goblin's path around the Sun was not only highly elliptical but also staggeringly wide. It takes roughly 40,000 years to complete a single orbit, swinging from the outer edges of the Kuiper belt into the dark unknown. But the real shock came from how its orbit aligned, or rather, didn't align, with everything else. Its trajectory hinted at an invisible hand pulling at it from deep space, warping its path like a puppet on a string. This wasn't the first time astronomers noticed gravitational anomalies at the edge of the solar system. But the Goblin provided something they hadn't seen before: predictable irregularity. When compared to other distant objects, its orbit fit into a growing pattern. That pattern pointed toward the possibility of a massive, hidden object lurking beyond Neptune. Something large enough to bend space around it. Something like Planet 9. Planet 9 is a theoretical world, proposed to be 10 times the mass of Earth and orbiting at a distance so vast, it has remained invisible to even our most powerful telescopes. For years, it was treated as an intriguing mathematical ghost, a placeholder in equations, a maybe. But when the Goblin appeared, it turned the maybe into a maybe not so crazy. NASA scientists began revising their internal simulations. Quietly. Without fanfare or press releases. Orbital models were updated with new variables. The Goblin was no fluke. Its trajectory demanded explanation. And the explanation kept pointing back to the same conclusion. Something massive was out there, pulling the strings in the dark. Leaked observatory data suggested that multiple high-altitude telescopes had been repurposed for long-range sky tracking. Internal NASA memos, never officially confirmed but widely circulated by astrophysics forums, hinted at a shift in focus, an increased urgency to analyze perturbations in known orbits of other celestial bodies. And yet, no formal announcements were made. No public missions were declared. It was as if NASA knew what it was looking for, but wasn't ready to talk about it. The gravitational anomalies weren't just affecting the Goblin. Other objects like SETI and 2012 VP-113 also showed signs of being disturbed by a hidden planet in the solar system. All these objects seemed to cluster in their orbital orientations, pointing toward a region of space that had never been explored in full. The possibility of Planet 9 became more than speculation. It began to feel like a cover-up. The Goblin was only the beginning. But it was the key that unlocked a hidden corridor of celestial evidence. One after another, astronomers began connecting the dots, tiny frozen relics on the edge of our known system, each tracing paths that defied the laws of gravitational symmetry. They weren't random. They were pointing to something. And if something was hiding out there, 10 times the mass of Earth, it begged a terrifying question. Could that mass be a rogue planet? Or worse, could it be a mirror Earth? A twin, cloaked in cosmic distance, traveling in such a way that we could never see it unless we knew exactly where to look. The Goblin raised that possibility. Its discovery disrupted decades of solar modeling and hinted that our understanding of planetary order might be incomplete, or manipulated. The fact that NASA updated internal models without full public transparency only added fuel to the growing suspicions. Why the silence? Why the sudden reclassification of sky survey data? As the Goblin continues its 40,000-year journey through the cosmic dark, it leaves behind a trail of questions more haunting than answers. Could it be the gravitational breadcrumb leading us to a twin Earth? And if so, has NASA known all along that something far more extraordinary than Planet 9 is lurking in the black, watching us, waiting, and maybe even reflecting our every move? Ancient myths or pre-science clues. Long before telescopes reached the outer edges of our solar system, before algorithms could predict gravitational patterns, human beings looked to the sky with wonder. They watched stars move, planets wander, and comets blaze, and from those observations, they built stories. Some of those stories were warnings. Others were riddles. But a few, just a few, feel disturbingly accurate in light of modern discoveries. They speak of twin worlds, of mirrored realities, and of planetary bodies that appear and disappear without warning. Are these myths, or were ancient civilizations onto something we've only recently begun to understand? One of the most controversial sources of this cosmic lore is the ancient Sumerian civilization. Among the oldest known written records on Earth, Sumerian cuneiform tablets describe the existence of a planet called Nibiru. This so-called 12th planet, according to translated texts, follows a long elliptical orbit and passes through our solar system once every several thousand years. Some interpretations suggest that Nibiru is not just a rogue planet, it's Earth's dark twin. While mainstream archaeology often dismisses these claims as misread translations or imaginative mythology, the parallels are striking. Nibiru, described as a massive celestial body that brings upheaval, seems eerily similar to modern discussions around Planet 9 and the possibility of a hidden planet in our solar system. The Sumerians weren't alone. Indigenous American tribes, particularly the Hopi, carry oral traditions that also point toward a concept of duality in the heavens. The Hopi speak of the blue star Kachina and the red Kachina, two celestial bodies that signal great transformation on Earth. The blue star is said to represent purification, a kind of cosmic reset. But what's more intriguing is their belief in a twin Earth, another realm that mirrors our own, existing alongside but unseen. The Hopi twin Earth prophecy, passed down through generations, suggests that what happens here is reflected there. This belief predates our knowledge of planetary orbits or Lagrange points by thousands of years. In ancient Hindu cosmology, there is a concept known as Dvipa, islands or continents that exist not just on Earth but in parallel realms. Some texts describe these realms as accessible only during specific alignments of planets, almost as if their visibility is controlled by orbital mechanics. Ancient Chinese astronomers wrote of a counter-Earth that occasionally appears in certain astronomical cycles, always fleeting, never predictable. Even the Greeks speculated about an antichthon, a shadow Earth that orbited the Sun in perfect sync with our own, always hidden behind it. What makes these stories more than mere legends is their eerie alignment with what modern science is starting to observe. The concept of a planet that shares Earth's orbit, hidden by the Sun's glare or tucked into a gravitational blind spot, is not only plausible, it's already modeled in astrophysical simulations. In fact, NASA and the European Space Agency have both explored the idea of Trojan planets, objects that share orbits with larger planets but remain hidden in stable gravitational zones. If an Earth-sized Trojan existed in the L3 position, directly opposite our orbit, it could remain undetected by most of our telescopes and instruments. When these myths are overlaid onto modern sky charts and orbital models, something remarkable happens. The regions of the sky associated with Nibiru sightings align with areas currently being reanalyzed by astronomers searching for Planet 9. The orbital characteristics described in ancient texts, highly elliptical, long period, erratic, are now the same terms being used in scientific journals. It's as if the ancients didn't just imagine these celestial bodies. They observed them, tracked them, and wove their existence into culture and prophecy. Skeptics argue that mythological stories shouldn't be conflated with science. And yet, history is full of scientific rediscoveries of ancient knowledge. From the heliocentric model to eclipses, many truths were first wrapped in allegory before being proven by measurement. The question we must ask is whether the same applies here. Were these ancient civilizations trying to warn us, or at least remind us, that Earth is not alone, not just in terms of extraterrestrial life, but in terms of planetary identity? The patterns across cultures are too consistent to ignore. Civilizations separated by oceans, with no shared language or trade, somehow landed on the same concept: a mirrored Earth, a twin planet, a second home hidden in plain sight. Whether you call it Nibiru, Antikython, or the twin Earth of Hopi prophecy, the narrative is hauntingly similar. A world just out of reach, watching, waiting, and perhaps shaping our destiny in ways we've never understood. The more we uncover about our solar system, the hidden planet in our solar system, the Goblin's strange path, the gravitational clues, the more these myths begin to sound less like fiction and more like foresight. Could it be that ancient skywatchers left behind not just stories, but warnings carved into stone? And if so, are we finally on the edge of discovering what they always knew, that Earth has a twin, and its silence is not absence, but purpose? NASA's silent mission logs and redacted documents. For years, there has been a growing unease within the scientific community. Not because of what NASA has announced, but because of what it hasn't. In a digital age where information is supposedly more transparent than ever, NASA's silence on certain celestial anomalies has become deafening. The leaks didn't start as dramatic revelations. They began as inconsistencies, small but persistent, found buried within mission logs and observation archives, details that seemed to vanish just when they became interesting. These fragments have built a case that's too large to ignore. The story of Earth's hidden twin might not have begun with discovery, but with a mission. It all began with a peculiar series of document removals from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL. Amateur astronomers and data archivists first noticed changes in public satellite logs in early 2021. Sections of sky once mapped by deep space probes suddenly became inaccessible in NASA's public databases. Raw datasets were either replaced by error messages or simply disappeared without explanation. The missing coordinates weren't random. They belonged to a specific region of the sky, one that had already been flagged for unusual gravitational readings by independent researchers. Soon after, requests were filed under the Freedom of Information Act, or FIA, seeking clarity on the emissions. The requests focused on missions like WISE, Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, which had scanned the entire sky in infrared and previously revealed thousands of new objects in the outer solar system. The hope was that the raw data might shed light on what was removed or obscured. The responses were puzzling. Many of the returned documents came back heavily redacted, entire paragraphs blacked out, file names blurred, and file descriptions replaced with vague terms like unknown object analysis or non-terrestrial mass estimation. These vague placeholders ignited speculation. What was being hidden, and why? The name Object 23X first surfaced in a leak tied to an internal communication string among NASA and JPL engineers. The context suggested it was not a confirmed planet, but an active tracking subject, something being observed, analyzed, but not disclosed to the public. Its orbital data was partially included in a redacted chart showing object trajectories that extended well beyond Pluto, into regions associated with the theorized Planet 9. Unlike the other objects listed, Object 23X had no official designation, no discovery credit, and no orbital model available for public review. It existed in limbo, officially unconfirmed but quietly pursued. From 2017 to 2022, internal activity surrounding Object 23X appeared to intensify. Leaked NASA mission logs revealed that several observational platforms had been redirected without prior notice. The Sophia Airborne Observatory, typically used for high-altitude atmospheric readings, had changed its flight patterns to pass over latitudes that aligned with the object's suspected position. Ground-based telescopes in Chile and Hawaii reported shifts in viewing priorities, citing vague references to dark zone surveillance. When this behavior was cross-referenced with telescope booking logs obtained through secondary FOIA requests, a pattern emerged: periods of blackout around the same celestial coordinates, revisited repeatedly over 5 years. The redaction timeline itself is revealing. Between 2019 and 2023, a surge of document classification updates was quietly added to internal NASA directories. Formerly public logs from deep sky surveys were reclassified, and certain telescope logs, including from Keck and Subaru, were locked behind institutional access credentials. Even university researchers affiliated with these programs reported being cut off from raw datasets they once used freely. Meanwhile, NASA's official releases remained silent on the matter. There were no announcements, no acknowledgements of Object 23X, and no explanations for the reclassification. It was as if a piece of the solar system had simply been erased from the map. One of the more compelling leaks came not from NASA directly, but from a third-party contractor involved in mission logistics. The individual, who remains anonymous, shared partial screenshots of internal tracking software that listed Object 23X with tags like L3 positional tracking, non-reflective body, and potential symmetry point. These tags suggest something extraordinary: an object not only massive but possibly occupying a position in Earth's orbit that would make it permanently invisible from Earth's surface. The symmetry point designation caught particular attention, hinting at the long-discussed theory of a hidden Earth twin at the L3 Lagrange point, directly opposite Earth's orbit around the Sun. The implications of these tags were clear to those familiar with orbital mechanics. A non-reflective body would evade standard telescope detection. A mass located at the L3 point would remain hidden behind the Sun from Earth's perspective at all times. If such an object existed and NASA was tracking it under the code name Object 23X, the secrecy would make sense. But the secrecy also raises deeper questions. Is NASA hiding a discovery so disruptive it could change the foundations of science and society? Or is it shielding humanity from a truth it believes we're not ready to face? The most concerning element may not be the existence of Object 23X itself, but the way it's been handled. The layers of redaction, the quiet rerouting of missions, the data reclassifications, and the refusal to address public inquiry suggest not simple oversight but deliberate suppression. The frequency of terms like need-to-know access, sensitive tracking zones, and mission-critical visibility management only deepens the mystery. Every censored line fuels another layer of suspicion. What remains now is a tangled web of clues. Redacted NASA files. Leaked mission logs. A name, Object 23X, that exists only in whispers and code. But all these threads point to the same unsettling conclusion. Something large, distant, and possibly Earth-like is being tracked. And those tasked with observing it are going to great lengths to ensure the rest of the world remains in the dark. Whether it is a planet, a twin Earth, or something even stranger, Object 23X may be the silent sentinel orbiting in perfect secrecy. But secrecy cannot hold forever. And as technology advances and more eyes turn to the sky, the truth behind the redactions will eventually emerge. The science of Lagrange points and opposite orbit theory. To understand how a hidden planet might have eluded detection for so long, we have to shift from conspiracy into physics. The universe is governed by balance, and nowhere is that more apparent than in the elegant geometry of gravitational fields. Lagrange points are a perfect example of that balance, a celestial dance where gravity from two massive bodies, like Earth and the Sun, creates pockets of stability. There are 5 such points around the Earth-Sun system, labeled L1 through L5. These points are more than mathematical curiosities. They are real locations in space where an object can remain fixed in relation to Earth and the Sun, maintaining its position without the need for constant propulsion. Of all the Lagrange points, L3 has long been the most elusive and the most mysterious. Located directly opposite Earth on the far side of the Sun, the L3 point is completely invisible to us from the ground. Any object located there would be perpetually hidden by the Sun's blinding glare. This makes L3 the perfect candidate for a planet-sized body that mirrors our orbit, an L3 opposite orbit planet traveling in near-perfect synchronization with Earth. And if such a body exists, it may have been there since the early formation of the solar system, hidden not by distance, but by position. The idea that an Earth-Trojan planet could be occupying such a location is not far-fetched. Trojan planets are already known to exist in our solar system. Jupiter has dozens of Trojan asteroids traveling along its orbital path, neatly locked into gravitational stability at its own L4 and L5 points. Even Earth itself has a small Trojan asteroid, 2010 TK7, discovered in 2010, moving along the L4 point in a stable, predictable arc. If small bodies can remain stable in these gravitational pockets, why not larger ones? Scientists at Caltech and the European Space Agency have run simulation models exploring the possibility of Earth-sized planets existing at opposite points in Earth's orbit. These simulations used gravitational modeling software and orbital dynamics to determine whether a body of similar mass could remain in the L3 zone without being destabilized by other planetary forces, such as the pull from Jupiter or the Moon. The results were surprising. The simulations showed that under very specific early solar system conditions, it is theoretically possible for a hidden planet to co-orbit with Earth at the L3 position. The challenge isn't its existence, it's detecting it. L3 is not just a blind spot. It's a cosmic dead zone for observation. Standard Earth-based telescopes cannot see behind the Sun. Even satellite observatories like SOHO, which study the Sun from various positions in space, are not optimized for constant monitoring of the L3 region. Any object there would not reflect sunlight directly toward Earth and would remain in an eternal shadow zone from our point of view. This is one of the few regions in our immediate cosmic neighborhood that remains observationally uncharted. In the realm of hidden planet science, L3 is the last great hiding place. If an Earth-Trojan planet is orbiting in the L3 position, it would need to match Earth's speed and distance from the Sun precisely. It would be bound by the same orbital year, moving in lockstep, never gaining or falling behind. This synchronous motion would make it seem almost tethered to us, like a reflection that can never be seen directly. Some theoretical models even suggest that slight oscillations in its orbit, called librations, could bring it in and out of view over millennia, making ancient sightings like those described in Sumerian or Hopi lore all the more compelling. What's most intriguing is that recent advances in infrared astronomy may soon allow us to scan regions once thought unreachable. Space-based infrared telescopes like the James Webb are capable of detecting faint heat signatures from celestial bodies hidden by cosmic dust or solar glare. These instruments could, in time, peer around the edges of the Sun's reach and capture indirect signals from the L3 zone. If a planet is there, the coming decade of observation may finally prove it. Until then, the idea of an L3 opposite orbit planet remains both a scientific possibility and a haunting enigma. It resides in the overlap between physics and mystery, grounded in gravitational equations yet shrouded by the limits of our current technology. The concept is no longer a fringe theory. It's an area of ongoing interest, quietly discussed in mission planning rooms and academic papers that never quite make the headlines. Hidden planet science isn't about fantasy anymore. It's about catching up to what may have been right next to us all along, an Earth-Trojan planet, sharing our journey around the Sun, locked in perfect symmetry, invisible but real. As we continue to explore the dark and uncharted spaces of our solar system, L3 remains the one place that could still hold the ultimate cosmic secret. A twin planet, not light years away, but orbiting just behind the curtain of our own sunlit path. The Kepler anomalies, a pattern NASA couldn't ignore when NASA launched the Kepler Space Telescope in 2009, its mission was straightforward: to search for exoplanets by detecting the faint dimming of stars as planets passed in front of them. This method, known as the transit method, quickly became one of the most effective ways to detect distant worlds. In its first few years, Kepler helped identify thousands of candidate planets, transforming our understanding of the galaxy. But as data poured in, something unexpected began to surface, signals that didn't behave like ordinary planetary transits. These anomalies, subtle at first, grew more frequent and harder to ignore. And over time, they started forming a pattern that pointed towards something far stranger than just distant exoplanets. Among the earliest puzzles were irregular dimming patterns that didn't conform to known orbital mechanics. In typical transits, planets create a consistent dip in a star's brightness, repeating at regular intervals. But some signals showed up late, or early, or seemed to vanish altogether, only to reappear with altered timing. Scientists initially chalked it up to data noise or instrument error, but as the anomalies accumulated, the excuses began to wear thin. Certain signals were so consistent in their irregularity that they began to defy conventional explanation. These weren't glitches. They were unknown signals NASA couldn't fully explain. The data became even more perplexing when a small cluster of stars showed not just inconsistent dimming, but mirrored dimming events. That is, stars dimmed in a pattern that seemed to reflect those of nearby stars, but in reverse. The dips in brightness occurred with identical timing and intensity, but as if seen through a lens flipped on its axis. Some called it coincidence. Others suspected instrumental interference. But as the list of affected stars grew, the anomaly demanded deeper attention. NASA's own teams at Ames Research Center quietly started digging into the pattern. Internal logs, later leaked through anonymous uploads, described what scientists began calling symmetric signal displacement. In one of the most talked about cases, dubbed KIC 8,419,645, dimming patterns appeared on two stars separated by several light-years but mimicked each other in sequence and depth. Independent researchers attempted to replicate the analysis and were stunned to find the same mirrored patterns present in raw Kepler data. There was no known reason for such synchronization unless something was reflecting the light, or manipulating it. That's when a new theory emerged. Some astrophysicists began speculating that the anomalies might be caused by gravitational lensing, a phenomenon where light from a distant source is bent by the gravity of an object between the source and the observer. It's a well-documented effect, but in this case, it was acting in an unexplainable way. The idea was radical. What if the light wasn't being bent by a random massive object like a black hole, but by a mirror Earth, a hidden planet reflecting not light, but orbital behavior? This mirror Earth theory gained quiet traction in academic circles, especially after comparisons were drawn between Kepler's star dimming data and predicted reflections from a planet in Earth's L3 position. If such a planet existed and was roughly the same size and mass as Earth, it could, in theory, create a gravitational shadow or mirror-like effect that would show up in light curves, especially if it were positioned opposite Earth and occasionally aligned with distant star systems in Kepler's field of view. A research paper, never officially published but widely circulated in astrophysics mailing lists, proposed a model showing how a symmetrical body in an opposite orbit could distort observational data. Using simulations, the authors showed that such a planet could, under very specific alignments, create delayed shadow effects and faint mirrored signals in star-like curves. These would appear exactly like the anomalies Kepler had been recording. The study didn't claim discovery. It didn't make headlines. But it planted a seed, a plausible explanation for the unexplainable, grounded in gravitational physics and observational geometry. What made the case even more compelling was the nature of Kepler's orbit itself. Unlike Earth-bound telescopes, Kepler orbited the Sun in an Earth-trailing heliocentric path. This gave it a unique vantage point for detecting variations in stellar light. From this position, it could, at least theoretically, pick up faint interactions between reflected light and gravitational distortions caused by an object hidden from Earth's direct view. The anomalies, when plotted against time and spatial orientation, began to form a map, one that didn't point to random interference, but to a structured, repeating interference pattern consistent with an object of planetary mass. NASA never officially addressed the mirror Earth evidence. The anomalies were catalogued, some were quietly removed from public access databases, and the rest were buried beneath the avalanche of confirmed exoplanet discoveries. But independent scientists kept probing, and amateur data analysts started creating their own light curve visualizations. Across Reddit forums, academic blogs, and obscure astrophysics journals, the conversation evolved. What started as scattered irregularities became a theory, one that the establishment refused to engage with openly. The most unsettling suggestion was that these weren't just gravitational shadows or lensing effects. Some began to wonder if the anomalies were caused by artificial manipulation, signatures from a technological presence orbiting opposite us. While still far from mainstream, the idea that a mirror Earth could harbor intelligent life capable of interfering with light signals adds a chilling twist to the already complex data. If true, we wouldn't just be dealing with a twin planet. We'd be dealing with a conscious twin, capable of observing or even signaling us without our knowledge. Whether natural or artificial, the Kepler space anomalies persist. They remain unsolved mysteries hidden in plain sight, buried in terabytes of archived data, visible only to those willing to question official interpretations. The unknown signals NASA encountered may hold the key to something much bigger than exoplanets. They could be the cosmic fingerprints of our hidden reflection, a planet moving as we move, orbiting as we orbit, but always just out of view. As Kepler's mission ended and its lens went silent, it left behind a trail of questions that even the most advanced scientists couldn't answer. But what if it left us more than that? What if it left a breadcrumb trail to a secret our ancestors once suspected, and that we are only now beginning to prove? A mirror Earth. Real, elusive, and possibly reaching back through the stars to be found. The whistleblowers speak in the shadows behind every government space agency are people who saw too much and spoke too soon. These are the whistleblowers, former insiders, contractors, and researchers who decided that silence was no longer an option. When it comes to the mystery of Earth's hidden twin, it's not just leaked files or strange telescope data that fuel the speculation. It's the testimony of those who once held security clearance, operated deep space surveillance systems, or parsed mission logs most of us never knew existed. Their stories, fragmented and often discredited, are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. One of the earliest accounts came from a man known only by his pseudonym, Thomas R., a former contractor with a satellite imaging firm that supplied data to both NASA and the U.S. Department of Defense. In a podcast interview that quickly went viral before being taken offline, Thomas described reviewing a classified set of orbital renderings in 2016. These images, he claimed, did not resemble stars or exoplanets. They showed a planetary body, Earth-sized, in full spherical relief, captured in a rare moment when solar flares had briefly illuminated the region behind the Sun. According to Thomas, the planet appeared to have cloud systems, ice caps, and a faint ring of atmosphere. What shocked him most wasn't the image itself, but the metadata. The files had been labeled under a restricted folder called Reflective Synthesis Models, L3 Body. His access was revoked days after viewing the file, and he was informed by internal security teams that the material he had seen did not exist. Threats were subtle at first: non-disclosure reinforcement reminders, digital trace wipes, and finally a direct conversation with what he described as a psychological operations officer. He was told that further discussion of the image would result in both criminal charges and professional erasure. His NDA, already watertight, was reinforced with a new document referencing national security. Since that interview, Thomas has vanished from public view. His LinkedIn page is gone. His business license dissolved. To most people, he never existed. But his story was only the beginning. Multiple former NASA employees and subcontractors have since come forward anonymously through encrypted networks and investigative forums. One of them, using the alias Omega-19, described being part of a low-visibility data team tasked with parsing telemetry from deep space monitoring missions. According to Omega, sometime in 2018, a batch of high-level anomaly reports came across the desk marked multi-source confirmation. These were usually designations given to asteroids or comets, but in this case, the object wasn't moving like either. It maintained a fixed orbit behind the Sun, never drifting, never decaying. It was assigned the codename XZ213, though Omega insisted it was the same entity referenced in other departments as Object 23X. The internal memo used the term counter-orbital body, a phrase Omega had never seen before in any technical documentation. Later that same year, Omega was invited to a private briefing on AI-enhanced planetary mapping systems. During that session, they claimed to have seen rendered visualizations of a planet with topographic overlays and simulated surface conditions. The planetary features, modeled by neural networks based on gravitational and light-bending anomalies, showed terrain remarkably similar to Earth's: oceans, mountain ranges, even a central continental mass where a mirrored version of Eurasia would theoretically exist. The simulation was never formally published, but its file name was clear: Mirror Earth v4 Final. Omega claimed the team was then split up. 2 members were reassigned. One was transferred overseas. Another left the agency entirely after a reported nervous breakdown. From that point on, internal emails mentioning the project were censored, and access to the dataset was restricted under a new protocol called Duskfall. It became impossible to even acknowledge the existence of the simulations without tripping security alerts in the agency's internal systems. Another source, this time a retired systems engineer with over 30 years of experience at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, offered a different kind of warning. In an anonymous written testimony sent to a European science journal, he described the culture of fear that surrounds certain topics in planetary science. According to him, any mention of an Earth twin, especially one possibly located in the L3 position, was grounds for immediate classification. He described colleagues being shuffled off projects without explanation, and promising researchers who suddenly lost access to funding or academic publishing channels. This wasn't just silence. It was enforcement. The most disturbing claims involve discrediting campaigns, often targeting those who tried to go public. Former NASA scientists who broke rank have been labeled as conspiracy theorists, mentally unstable, or driven by career desperation. Digital fingerprints are erased. Academic citations disappear. In one notable case, a physicist who presented gravitational anomalies consistent with a mirror-Earth model at an international space conference found his university affiliation stripped from the published program within 24 hours. He never presented again. Psychological operations, or PSYOPs, have long been used by governments to shape public perception. According to whistleblower claims, these tactics are actively deployed against those who approach the twin Earth subject too closely. Some report being visited by agents posing as journalists or researchers, subtly feeding disinformation to create confusion. Others speak of being bombarded with online harassment, fake social media accounts, and AI-generated rumors meant to destroy their credibility before they ever go public. Yet despite the risks, the leaks keep coming. Not in grand disclosures, but in fragments, blurred screenshots, anonymized chat logs, corrupted data files that hint at something just beneath the surface. Every so often, a new name appears in the forums. A technician from a forgotten satellite program. A junior analyst who stumbled on a corrupted file directory. A researcher whose project was terminated under vague, redirection protocols. Each one adds a layer of complexity to the mystery. As more whistleblowers risk everything to share what they know, a picture begins to form, not from a single source, but from overlapping testimonies, shared technical language, and recurring references to a planet we were never supposed to know about. The existence of a NASA whistleblower twin Earth narrative is no longer confined to fringe circles. It is seeping into mainstream consciousness, threading itself through science fiction, conspiracy theory, and now, serious academic inquiry. Whether these former NASA employee leaks will ever lead to full public disclosure remains uncertain. But one thing is clear. Too many voices, from too many places, are echoing the same message. There is something out there. It is real. It is hidden. And those who've seen it firsthand have been silenced not because they lied. Could it be watching us? The idea that we might not be alone in the universe has lingered in human consciousness for centuries. But what if the intelligence watching us isn't from a distant galaxy or an alien star system? What if it's been right next to us all along, hidden in plain sight, orbiting in perfect synchronization with our own planet, never seen but always there? The notion of a mirror-Earth intelligence isn't just the stuff of science fiction anymore. It's a question that is now being asked by theoretical astronomers, astrophysicists, and SETI researchers alike. One of the most compelling scientific frameworks for such an idea comes from the concept of atmospheric lensing. In space, light behaves in complex ways. It bends, refracts, and can be manipulated by gravity or even planetary atmospheres. If a twin Earth truly exists in an L3 opposite orbit, directly behind the Sun from our point of view, it might remain hidden not just due to its position, but due to how its atmosphere distorts or absorbs light. This same atmospheric lensing, however, could work in reverse. If their planet's atmosphere is dense or specialized enough, it could function like a gigantic surveillance lens, focusing light and electromagnetic signals from Earth back toward them. In theory, such a planet wouldn't need to send probes or spacecraft to observe us. They could simply watch us in real time, using naturally occurring optics and advanced knowledge of wave interference. Earth radiates more than just light. We emit heat, radio waves, military frequencies, satellite chatter, and bursts of electromagnetic energy from every direction. A technologically advanced civilization wouldn't need to land to study us. They could sit in silence, collecting every signal we've ever broadcast, listening to the rise of our languages, the hum of our machines, and the chaos of our digital age. We would be completely unaware of being observed by a twin planet designed by nature, or something else, as a cosmic two-way mirror. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has traditionally focused on listening for radio signals from deep space. But some researchers within SETI have proposed a different possibility, that intelligent life may exist closer than we imagine. In recent years, internal SETI discussions have touched on the idea that the best hiding place for advanced life isn't far away, but nearby. A civilization that evolved alongside us in orbital symmetry could explain the Fermi paradox, the question of why we haven't encountered aliens despite the high probability of their existence. Perhaps we have. Perhaps they've been beside us from the beginning. The mirror-Earth intelligence theory gained a small but growing number of supporters after an unusual pattern of radio bursts was detected in 2019. These weren't the powerful, single-event fast radio bursts commonly seen from far-off galaxies. These were smaller, rhythmic, and repeated with strange precision, so precise, in fact, that they aligned with Earth's orbital motion. The bursts occurred only when Earth was in a specific position relative to the Sun, suggesting they were either being reflected from behind the Sun or being emitted from an object tracking our position in real time. What made these signals even more mysterious was their silent electromagnetic shadow patterns. When researchers reviewed archived data from the European Space Agency's Gaia spacecraft and the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, CHIME, they found faint interruptions, blips in the expected background noise. These weren't bursts of energy, but absences. Gaps. Shadows. In multiple data sets, faint null zones appeared at regular intervals, as if something massive was momentarily absorbing or deflecting electromagnetic radiation. The phenomenon couldn't be explained by asteroids or instrument error. The patterns were too exact, too synchronized with Earth's orbit to be coincidence. One interpretation is that these are the side effects of surveillance, not aggressive or invasive, but passive and deliberate. If a twin planet is observing us, it wouldn't need to be visible. It would simply need to be positioned in a way that maximizes observational efficiency while minimizing exposure. A planet at the L3 point would do exactly that, hidden from direct view, yet perfectly positioned to track every motion Earth makes. And if its inhabitants were technologically superior, they might even be capable of subtle manipulations in the electromagnetic environment to maintain their invisibility. The implications are staggering. It would mean that humanity has lived its entire history under a one-way window. Our scientific revolutions, our wars, our art and radio signals, all of it watched, recorded, and perhaps even studied by an intelligence that mirrors us in more ways than one. The term alien surveillance planet no longer feels like an outlandish fantasy. It feels like a question we should have been asking all along. But if this mirror Earth is truly intelligent, the next question is even more disturbing. Why haven't they contacted us? Is it caution? Observation? Or is it something more strategic, an ongoing assessment to determine whether we are ready to know they exist? Some believe this is why the evidence has been so elusive. Because the moment we become aware of being observed, everything changes. Our view of ourselves. Our religions. Our governments. Our sense of privacy and meaning. The truth would not just alter science. It would shatter the framework of civilization. And yet, the clues keep surfacing. Signals in the dark. Shadows in the data. Theories once dismissed as absurd now whispering through the walls of respected institutions. As our technology improves and our reach into the cosmos expands, we may soon learn the final truth. That we are not the only intelligent life in Earth's orbit. And that the twin planet we've long suspected isn't just a rock in space. It's a window. A mirror. And perhaps, the oldest observer we've never seen. Implications: religion, science, and global paradigm shift. The idea of a hidden twin planet is more than a scientific anomaly, it's a cultural and existential earthquake waiting to happen. If proven true, it would not just rewrite astrophysics textbooks. It would ripple through the deepest foundations of our global belief systems, power structures, and collective identity. The impact would be immediate, irreversible, and overwhelming. And perhaps that is why the truth has remained buried for so long. World religions, for centuries, have shaped their cosmologies around the assumption that Earth is unique. Whether Earth is the sacred center of divine creation or the chosen world among the stars, the idea of humanity's exceptional place in the universe underpins the spiritual frameworks of billions. The sudden appearance of a twin planet, one that mirrors Earth in structure or, even more unsettling, in life, would challenge these beliefs in unprecedented ways. Religions would be forced to reconcile centuries of doctrine with a physical twin that has always existed but was never mentioned in sacred texts. For some, it might represent divine symmetry. For others, heresy. Either way, the concept of a mirror Earth would trigger intense theological debate, fracturing old interpretations and forcing new questions about the origins of life, divinity, and purpose. Governments, particularly those with a stake in space exploration and military dominance, would face an even more immediate crisis. Control of space has always been a race for surveillance, weaponization, and influence. The existence of a second Earth orbiting in perfect concealment would upend those strategies. It would introduce an unknown variable into the most secure planning models of every global superpower. Intelligence agencies would scramble to assess the implications. Is the twin inhabited? Is it hostile? Has it been listening to our satellites, decoding our encrypted signals, watching us longer than we've even known how to watch ourselves? In that light, the NASA cover-up implications become less about secrecy for secrecy's sake, and more about containment. Perhaps the silence isn't driven by curiosity, but by fear. The philosophical consequences are equally profound. Humanity has spent millennia believing in its singularity. From the Enlightenment to the space age, our place in the universe has always been measured by our uniqueness. But if we are not alone, and if our twin is not light years away but orbiting in parallel, the idea of being the apex of evolution collapses. We would no longer be explorers in an empty universe. We would be neighbors, possibly latecomers to a relationship we never knew existed. The hidden Earth philosophy asks us to consider the idea that what we thought was everything might only be half. It could also explain the strange silence surrounding the subject across scientific institutions. Despite the growing body of observational anomalies, redacted files, and whistleblower testimony, major organizations continue to dismiss the idea with quiet force. Funding disappears. Researchers go silent. Data gets scrubbed from public archives. Perhaps this resistance is not about disbelief, but containment. Perhaps the institutions know what's at stake, and they've decided that the world isn't ready. Or worse, they've decided it's better if the world never finds out. Such a revelation would also blur the line between science and myth. For centuries, stories of a shadow Earth have appeared in cultures across the globe, legends of mirrored worlds, spiritual twins, and unseen watchers. These stories were dismissed as metaphors or primitive attempts to explain the unknown. But what if they were echoes of an ancient awareness? What if early civilizations glimpsed something in the sky we can no longer see, and encoded that knowledge into prophecy, song, and scripture? The convergence of ancient belief and modern discovery may no longer be coincidental. It may be confirmation. If the twin planet is ever confirmed, humanity will be forced to confront not only a new reality, but a new self. The implications would be staggering, not because of the planet itself, but because of what it says about us. About our limitations. Our assumptions. Our place in a much larger story. A story in which we are not alone, not central, and perhaps not even original. In the end, whether the mirror Earth is discovered tomorrow or remains hidden for another generation, its influence has already begun. It haunts our data, our myths, and now our collective imagination. The paradigm has shifted. And what comes next is not just a question of discovery, but of disclosure. Counterarguments and mainstream science's rebuttal. Despite the mounting intrigue surrounding the idea of a hidden twin Earth, not everyone in the scientific community is convinced. For many mainstream astrophysicists, the idea represents a collision between misunderstood data and speculative enthusiasm. They argue that what some interpret as proof of a mirror Earth is, in reality, the result of incomplete observations, over-reliance on pattern recognition, and a lack of peer-reviewed evidence. To them, this is less of a discovery and more of a narrative crafted around gaps in our understanding. The most common rebuttal is that orbital mechanics, as we understand them, make the sustained presence of a massive planet in Earth's opposite orbit highly unlikely. While the concept of Lagrange points is real, L3 is inherently unstable. Any Earth-sized object in that position would, over time, drift due to gravitational interference from other bodies like Jupiter. According to this view, if a twin planet had ever existed at L3, it would have either collided with another object, become visible as it moved out of position, or been detected by now through indirect gravitational effects. Those who support the idea are often accused of ignoring basic celestial dynamics to force a narrative. Another line of criticism comes from those studying the Kepler data and electromagnetic anomalies. Mainstream scientists have pointed out that many of the so-called mirrored signals can be attributed to instrumental noise, data processing errors, or unexplained natural phenomena that are not yet fully understood but do not require the existence of a hidden planet. In their view, the anomalies are genuine, but the conclusions drawn from them stretch beyond what the data supports. The process of debunking mirror Earth claims has become a quiet but ongoing effort within professional astronomy circles, often buried in technical reports and analysis papers that receive little public attention. When whistleblower accounts are brought into the conversation, the skepticism becomes even stronger. Without verifiable identities, supporting documentation, or corroborating public evidence, most astrophysicists dismiss these stories as either fabricated or grossly misinterpreted. While they acknowledge that institutional secrecy can exist, particularly around defense-linked space projects, they stop short of endorsing claims of widespread cover-ups or hidden civilizations. In this sense, the scientific community remains deeply divided, not over the data itself, but over its interpretation and the willingness to follow its implications into controversial territory. For now, the prevailing consensus within mainstream science is that there is no credible evidence to support the existence of a NASA twin planet hoax or deliberate suppression of planetary knowledge. The majority view is that twin planet myths, while compelling, remain just that, myths. Still, the debate is far from settled. As technology advances and observational tools improve, the divide may narrow or widen. And in that uncertain space, between skepticism and belief, the search for truth continues. The future of discovery. What happens next? As the boundaries of astronomy continue to stretch outward, so too does our capacity to uncover what has remained hidden. The idea of a mirror Earth orbiting silently behind the Sun may once have belonged to legend, but the tools of tomorrow are making what was once myth into a testable hypothesis. And the eyes now turning toward the sky are sharper, colder, and more powerful than anything humanity has ever built. The James Webb Space Telescope has already begun transforming our understanding of deep space, capturing light from galaxies that formed just after the birth of the universe. But one of its more overlooked capabilities lies closer to home. James Webb's ability to detect faint thermal signatures could make it possible to glimpse a large, cold planetary body within our own solar system, particularly if it's hiding behind solar glare. Paired with data from upcoming missions, it could finally provide a breakthrough in the search for Earth's mysterious twin. When scientists speak of James Webb twin planet possibilities, they are referring not to distant exoplanets, but to something that could be quietly sharing our orbit, cloaked in perfect symmetry. The Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, set to launch within the next few years, will take this even further. Designed to survey the cosmos with wide-field infrared imaging, it could pick up the faintest distortions in light and gravity, signatures that a planet-sized object at the L3 position would surely leave. In combination with improvements in AI-driven sky mapping, machine learning models will soon be able to reprocess decades of archived data in ways that might finally reveal patterns we've missed. The discoveries of the next decade will not come from looking farther, but from looking again, smarter, deeper, and without assumptions. But what happens if we find it? If Earth's hidden twin is real, could we reach it? Theoretically, yes. Though L3 remains permanently blocked by the Sun from Earth's vantage point, a carefully planned space mission, perhaps using a solar orbital trajectory, could send a probe to loop around the Sun and capture direct imagery. Such a mission would be costly, long, and politically complicated, but not impossible. Some speculate that planning for such a journey is already underway in secret under the umbrella of future space missions NASA is quietly developing. Projects so classified their budgets don't appear in public documentation. The more daring question is not whether we could travel there, but whether we should. If intelligent life exists on this twin planet, we must prepare for contact, not with something alien, but something familiar. What if the beings watching us are not extraterrestrials from distant star systems, but another version of ourselves? A parallel lineage, evolving on the far side of the Sun, in a place shaped by the same forces, yet lived through different histories. What if we're not being visited by aliens, but by ourselves? This idea has captivated the minds of some of the world's most forward-looking physicists and astrobiologists. Predictions for 2030 and beyond suggest that we will reach a tipping point where the sheer volume of unexplained data, light anomalies, electromagnetic distortions, orbital irregularities, will force mainstream science to confront the possibility of another Earth. One that we didn't invent in fiction, but that has always been there, just out of view. And as we move into this new chapter of discovery, we must also prepare for the psychological shift. To realize that the cosmos may be governed by dualities, that every light casts a shadow, every orbit has a counterpoint, and every civilization might echo in another, waiting to be recognized. We have searched the stars for signs of life, projecting our hopes into the vast silence. But maybe, all along, the answer has been circling us in secret. Not a visitation. Not a message from another world. But a mirror held up to our own. Because in the end, the greatest mystery may not be out there at all. It may be just behind us. Just out of sight.